And welcome back to Cecil TV. I am Doug Donnelly. This is another installment of our series of interviews of candidates who will be on the primary ballot in June. In this interview, we meet Ken Schmid, who lives in Rising Sun and is a candidate to represent District 3 on the Cecil County Council. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Doug. Pleasure to be here. Wasn't sure if you were pointing to me or if you wanted to actually shake my hand.
Oh, no.
Or maybe even the water.
Right. No, we're good. You are a newcomer to Cecil County politics. Is that correct?
To politics, yes. You could call me a longtime listener, first-time caller. How's that?
That's good. For our viewers, can you give us an idea of who Ken Schmid is?
Absolutely. I've been a resident of Cecil County now for almost 20 years. My wife and I moved here in 2009, shortly before the birth of our third child. Mm-hmm. And we've raised our family here in Cecil County ever since. So I have 2 children now who have graduated through CCPS. I have 2 more that are currently enrolled at Rising Sun High School, and then my daughter's at Calvert Middle. In terms of my background, grew up in Hawaii, actually. And I'm the proud son of an immigrant. My mother's from Japan. My father's American, of course, but on my father's side, we have ancestors that are buried in cemeteries across the Eastern Shore from the 1600s. So I have deep roots here in the Eastern Shore. From Hawaii, I moved to Delaware, lower, slower, as some people may characterize it. But loved my time down there. Went to the Air Force Academy immediately after high school and spent 2 years there, upon which I decided that I felt called to actually do some service. I was called to be a missionary in Brazil for 2 years. So I learned to speak Portuguese, pretty much went native. Due to some medical issues that actually came up, I was actually honorably discharged from the military. So just to clarify, especially for the vets out there, I'm not a veteran technically, but I'm definitely a sympathizer, and I do come from a long history of members of the military. My grandfather was a combat veteran in Vietnam. I have 2 uncles that are proud veterans, retired from the military as well. My brother is actually currently serving, and we have ancestors that have been serving our country since the French and Indian War. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't been very interested in continuing to support the community. So, believe it or not, about 14 years ago, I actually weighed close to 300 pounds. And my doctor was really concerned about my health. And so I took up a martial art called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And some people, I've heard it called best the ancient Japanese martial art of folding clothes while people are still inside of them. It's actually used by law enforcement and military as a technique to minimize damage to the people that you're trying to control. To be able to control them in a way that doesn't, that doesn't necessarily impact their health or threaten their health, is what I was searching for. So that's kind of me on a personal level. On a professional level, I spent 20 years in high tech. I like to tell people that I kind of have global reach and global leadership, but really follow local values. I've been working in large tech companies, but also small Silicon Valley startups. Most recently, I've been working really in the area of partnerships. And so working with multi-million-dollar companies and being able to identify not just win-win, but win-win-win opportunities. And where it makes sense to really be able to multiply the benefits of partnerships and joining together.
Right. Okay. So, how did your decision to run for county council come about, and why do you think you're qualified for this?
So it's somewhat long story, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. I have really felt the desire to be more involved in my county, and especially in local politics. I think that honestly, one can have the most impact in not just their day-to-day, but the day-to-day of their neighbors in local politics. In my life, my focus has always been family, faith, career, and everything else. And frankly, my family took a lot of my time, took a lot of my attention. And it wasn't until just recently that I found that I could make time and make room to be able to run. I was approached, actually, I expressed an interest at first to run for school board. And I was told instead by several people that maybe my talents and abilities might be best utilized in the county council. And so here I am. I actually registered to run February 20th, so actually 4 days before the deadline.
Right.
And so I've been running basically since then.
Yeah.
Both figuratively and literally, for that matter.
Yes. Okay. Well, job creation, traffic, school capacity, and the vitality of our downtowns are just some of the issues that affect the daily lives of people. What should be the goals of the county in balancing commercial development with the multiple aspects of enhancing the quality of life for Cecil County residents?
It's interesting you bring that up. When I first moved to Cecil County, my family and I actually moved to Elkton. And similar to many other young families, we saved our pennies. We made some wise investments, and we were able to move to Rising Sun. Shortly after we moved to Elkton, it was pretty easy to see that this county was just beautiful. Tons of natural resources, tons of outdoor activity, great events that are being held here. But Rising Sun is absolutely a special place. And so we consider ourselves very fortunate that we were able to find a place that where we did. One of my neighbors, actually he is literally my neighbor, is an 8th generation farmer and actually owns one of the oldest continuously running farms in Maryland. And so selfishly, I'm very much interested in keeping that small town feel. I also have Amish neighbors where I can walk to their house and I can buy some of their homemade pretzels. And that's not something that I want to see disappear. And I think there's a lot of people that agree with me. So, sensible development is first and foremost on my mind. I mentioned my background in technology. And there's a stereotype, and we come by it honestly, of moving fast, and progress at all costs. I'll be the first to admit that there may have been times, I would say early in my career, that I might have agreed with that a little bit more, maybe even a lot more than I do today. I think my experience and let's call it wisdom now, with a few years behind me and a few scars for that matter, have really taught me to kind of have more of a balanced approach. I really appreciate what the council and what county government has done by really identifying economic development centers, right, such as Bainbridge, Principio. There's some mixed-use development in Southside as well. So there's some really good projects that are put in strategic areas in order to try to minimize some of those impacts that you mentioned, such as traffic and things like that. I also, for that matter, really respect and admire what they're doing in terms of, and especially my opponent, in terms of trying to preserve farmland and really holding a hard line behind preserving the top tier and the most beneficial soil and land that we have.
This actually was my next question.
Oh, well, there you go. So, it's like I'm reading your mind.
You agree with
I do.
Al Miller's?
I do. I absolutely do. Now, where I may disagree, well, actually, let me take a step back. I will also add that I agree with him that solar is not the most efficient, sustainable energy source. In fact, I would say that it's relatively inefficient. It might be in some cases some of the best that we have right now, especially when you compare it to wind and some of the other sustainable sources. But there are really some interesting and innovative technologies that are coming down the pipeline. One of the unique aspects of what I work in and what I do in technology is that I kind of have an inside track to some of these technologies that are coming down the pipe. My father-in-law is a retired nuclear chemist. Before that, he was actually a nuclear officer in the Navy. And right here in Cecil County, we actually have experts that are working with the next generation of nuclear technology. So imagine, if you will, a fully self-contained nuclear reactor that's about the size of a school bus. The technology is completely different. In fact, the reaction itself actually occurs in little pebbles that are coated in a special coating that is actually safe enough that you could lick it if you really wanted to. And it's suspended in a non-toxic fluid. And in essence, I'm not going to bore you with all the details, it generates heat. And of course, just like any other energy production, that heat can then produce steam, et cetera, et cetera.
Does one of these exist?
They're actually testing them right now.
Is this like a tokamak?
Well, they call it, it's an self-contained reactor or portable reactor. The Army's trialing them right now. We're actually, I would say probably within 6 to 8 years away. There's already active contracts with Amazon and Dow, for example. Dow Chemical is looking at them for heat production, actually, for some of their chemical processes. But one of the reasons why I bring that up is there's discussion about potentially putting data centers in Bainbridge. I have heard people mention maybe in Southside. I haven't really seen anything that would lead me to believe that that's the case. I would urge caution with that. I told you I grew up in Delaware, and so I have friends and family that are actually heavily involved in politics in Delaware. They just recently overturned a referendum to try to put a data center there. The main issue being that they calculated that the energy consumption of that one data center would be the equivalent of all of the residential houses in Delaware every month without any new power plant being put in place. What these portable nuclear reactors would allow us to do potentially is to bring in these data centers, but to make them energy independent. And potentially not even energy independent, but provide energy to the local grid. Case. Exactly. And then, second, how interesting would it be is if this company could potentially move some of their manufacturing to Cecil County to bring some of those jobs to us.
Right. Okay. Okay, so changing gears a bit, we're seeing a relatively cooperative relationship between the school system and the county administration. And there may always be a gap between the money CCPS asks for and what the county executive says the county can afford. How do we arrive at what might be considered appropriate funding for the schools while avoiding the political uproar of 2 years ago?
That's a really, really good question. I feel like I should preface all of this, or preface my comments, by saying that my family and I have been incredibly blessed and fortunate to be in a county that really provides great resources and programs for our children. My sons are pretty diverse. I have one that was heavily involved in the musical theater and plays. He was an all-state choir every year in high school. And up until his senior year, there was actually funding to be able to cover his stay down in Baltimore for that. We really didn't have to pay much at all out of pocket. My other sons have been able to take the SATs for very little money. I got to tell you right now, growing up, I had to pay for the SATs every time. And so the fact that there has been funding allocated for those types of activities, that is definitely something to be proud about. The fact that the school is really prioritizing those activities and those engagements. I agree with you. I think that there's always going to be more need, and there's always going to be a gap between what the county can allocate and what the CCPS actually needs. According to the Maryland Blueprint, they are also under a lot of constraints. I think sometimes it's hard to forget or hard to remember that a lot of these requirements that CCPS is under isn't coming from just somebody in the administration. They're actually coming from the state, right? Right,
particularly because of the blueprint.
Exactly. And for the fact of that matter, with programs like OpenGov, where the current county administration is trying to increase visibility and transparency in the budget, and in this budgeting process, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think, though, going back to kind of my background with partnerships, for that matter, we're not the only county that's facing these challenges. Ours is not the only school system that's facing these administrative requirements that are coming down from Annapolis. For that matter, one of the biggest things that they're facing right now is the 75-25 rule, right? Where 75% of the dollars allocated need to go to the classroom and 25% need to be allocated for administration. And that needs to be demonstrated through audits. Well, how interesting would it be if we could actually partner with some other Eastern Shore school districts that are also under the same constraints to be able to spread out some of those administrative costs to be able to help us achieve those goals. I mean, and we already have precedent for that. I mean, currently we're a member of a 9-county consortium. All the superintendents are involved. We use that for collective bargaining power when it comes to equipment and technology. I think it'd be interesting to raise that question and ask whether or not we could share some of those administrative costs.
Right.
Now,
particularly since like Kent County is kind of shrinking.
yes, absolutely.
And you know, they have great people in their administration.
Absolutely. And just to tie a nice bow around this, again, I really feel that, you know, my background in partnerships, in collaboration, in thinking outside the box, in really just having kind of an innate sense of curiosity and asking the questions that maybe other people aren't asking or maybe aren't willing to ask, I think really allows me to, you know, potentially help with this change and help with being able to move us forward into what I would call Cecil 2.0 instead of Cecil 1.0, just to borrow a technology term.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you have a final message for voters?
I do. You know, you mentioned that I'm a political newcomer, but you know, I wanted to let people know a little bit more about myself. I absolutely support law enforcement. I have two brothers-in-law that one is currently serving as a police officer. Unfortunately, one died fairly young. Some might argue due to the stresses of the job. So, you know, being able to work with local law enforcement, being able to ensure that they have all the support that they need to be able to do their jobs and to be able to protect the citizens of Cecil County is something that would be, you know, one of my top priorities. You know, I already mentioned supporting agriculture, and that's not just lip service, and that's not just selfishness because I want to keep my front yard, you know, pristine and open and you know, from time to time filled with corn that that my neighbor uses to be able to feed his livestock, but really to be able to preserve this way of life, to be able to allow for our children who want to continue in agriculture to have the means and have the jobs necessary to be able to do that. I also feel with my technology background as well that I can also ask the questions and I can also, you know, identify new opportunities to leverage technology. So again, to kind of combine some of these old school values and traditional values with some of the new technology, whether that be with drones or agriculture or irrigation, equipment, you know, things of that nature. Absolutely support veterans. I mentioned that, you know, I work right now, I'm an instructor for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I actually work with a foundation that helps veterans with PTSD and, you know, be able to kind of still have that same sense of camaraderie and the same sense of brotherhood that they might have had at one time in the military. And to do that in a safe and active environment with other like-minded individuals. You know, we talked about education, right? Again, I am 100% supportive of education and to be able to get as much of our funding into the classrooms, to be able to help support our students and help support our teachers. I think teachers are some of the most underpaid and underappreciated professionals that we have right now. I have many, many friends that are teachers. I know what it takes. I know the late nights. I know the long weekends. And, you know, sure, you might think, oh, they have the whole summer off. Well, frankly, they deserve every day that they get to be able to do that. In terms of something that's really, really near and dear to my heart, as I speak to the citizens of Cecil County, and I speak to particularly the youth. I've been a youth leader in my church and in my community. I was a Boy Scout leader for almost 20 years. I actually, at one point, was helping to run the training for all brand new Boy Scout leaders in the Delmarva Council. I'm a proud Eagle Scout, by the way, so always be prepared.
Yes, so is my son.
Nice.
So is our next host.
Absolutely.
Rob Churnside.
So, you know, I am especially sensitive to the needs of our youth. And when you look around in Cecil County, we do have some, let's call them, you know, cornerstone employers. So we have Northrop Grumman, we have Tarumo, we have Gore. They have internship programs. They're partnered with the Cecil College School of Tech. They're partnered with Cecil College. But when you actually look at the numbers themselves, they're very, very small fraction. I mean, just going through some of the information that I found, Northrop Grumman only has about 40 to 60 students in their internship program at any given time every year. Gore only has between 10 to 20 students. They're mainly at the college level, and they're actually split between Delaware and Cecil College, between University of Delaware and Cecil College. And then Tarumo only has 5 to 10 students at any given time. Well, when you consider that Cecil College has 5,000 students, And when you consider that there are about 1,000 students that graduate every year from CCPS, that's a pretty big gap. And so being able to identify ways that we can partner more and encourage more to be able to get more of our students to see the vision and see the opportunities that are here in Cecil County, I think is incredibly important. Now these are the programs that are already in place, so maybe we need to work to expand them. But there's other opportunities as well. One of the things that I haven't really heard anybody mention is that, yes, we're putting in these warehouses. There's incredible development going on in Bainbridge, Amazon, Lytle, for example. Medline Technologies, though, is also putting in their warehouses. Well, who do you think, or what kind of technology do you think they're using to help increase efficiency within these warehouses? It's actually robotics.
Yes.
And so where do you think they're bringing the people and the technicians to be able to work on those? On that equipment. Unfortunately, we don't have the training here.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, I heard that the next Amazon warehouse
is all
to
robotics.
be built is like 3 floors of robots.
Yes. Now,
and Amazon says that by 2030 they'll have laid off something like 2/3 of their people.
So. And we can put a pin on that if you want. I can go back to that because I've been impacted by layoffs in technology myself a couple times actually. But going back to this, topic, right? We have some of the leaders in robotics technology in the nation and arguably in the world that are coming here to Cecil County. We should be able to take advantage of that to be able to educate our youth and to be able to give them those opportunities. If you're getting tax breaks to be able to put these warehouses in Cecil County, you should also be giving back to the community and participating in some of these training programs that we have in Cecil County. Now, going back to layoffs and jobs, right? There is a 2-letter word that have some people waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat.
Of course.
And it's AI, right? Now, I have worked in AI for the last 10 years. Today in my job, I probably use AI between 60 and 70% of my work. It is absolutely a force multiplier. It is scary what it can do, but it is also a tool. And it can be harnessed and it can be used to be able to multiply your efforts. AI is never going to be able to take some of these interpersonal conversations. AI is never going to be able to go to a bedside to be able to help care for a patient. AI is never going to be able to replace a lot of the, let's call it soft skills, right?
Right.
And for that matter, we are at a very interesting inflection point. Just as fast as AI is increasing, and that frankly it is potentially replacing some of these jobs, there is huge opportunity to, again, use it as a force multiplier to identify where we can use our innate biological advantages over AI and then use that as a force multiplier, right? I think it was my grandfather once told me, what would have been like to be the carriage maker seeing that first Model T rolling by, right? Well, you either could have said, well, that's it, that's the end of my job, right? You could have said, well, let's give it a couple more years, or you could have said, you know what? They're probably going to need somebody to do the body work, and they're definitely going to need somebody to do the wheel work on that. Why don't I learn how to do that?
All right. Okay. Well, Ken Schmid, I thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
And Ken Schmid is the candidate for Cecil County Council District 3. So stay tuned for more candidate interviews. Thank you very much. Good night.